22 meeting to order. Please join us in the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Clerk Newbeck here. Trustee Aliaga?
Here.
Trustee Brown?
Here.
Trustee Nalamothu? Here. And Trustee Ritchie?
Here.
And Treasurer Lochran is absent this evening. We have a quorum.
Thank you. You have the agenda before you. Is there a motion to make a modification or a motion to approve?
I'm going to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next on the agenda are the board and public announcements. Any announcements by board members?
I have a few.
Okay, Carrie.
Clerk's office has issued a solicitor certificate to the Clarkston Area Lions Club. They will be doing their annual White Cane Week fundraising drive. The Lions Club are recognized for their service to the visually and the hearing impaired, in addition to supporting a variety of other organizations. Their solicitation dates are scheduled for Friday, April 29th and Saturday, April 30th, and then again on Friday, May 6th, Saturday, May 7th, from the hours of 8 to 6. They will be at the intersections of Mabee and Sashabaw Roads and Clarkston and Sashabaw Roads. Also, wanted to announce that the Angels Place race will take place on Saturday, May 14th, starting at St. Daniel's Church at 9:30 a.m. This is the 15th year anniversary for the race in Clarkston. Angels Place is a nonprofit organization that provides people-centered services, including homes, professional support for adults with developmental disabilities. The 20 residential homes are located in Oakland County and in Macomb County. The homes offer residents a family environment with an atmosphere of compassion, dignity, well-being, and the potential for personal growth and acceptance. They have received approval from the township for this event. And lastly, I just wanted to mention, I'm sure we've all seen the blue pinwheels throughout the township. The month of April is Pinwheels for Prevention. This is through the Clarkston Area Youth Assistance. I think one of their mottos or slogans is to provide positive relationships with caring adults throughout the community and help young people feel supported and to help develop their resiliency. One of my favorites that is something that they say is a small act of kindness can leave a lasting impact. You never know when your small act can be the one that makes a big difference to someone else. So that's all I have.
Okay, any other board members?
I have one. I saw the new Pine Knobs sign go up, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
Yep.
Great.
it's very nice.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I just wanna congratulate Trustee Nalamatu for the recent election on the county convention and the Republican Party. We have this big election with the delegates, and we have several candidates, include former state reps, former elected officials. It was a very difficult election. It's who's gonna win this because there's so many people, and Terry ended up being the top vote getter, getting I guess a perfect record of votes. So I wanna congratulate you, Terry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, she did a great work for the Republican Party in Oakland County, and we're gonna be in the state convention, I believe, this weekend. So that's all.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, any announcements as opposed to comments? Comments will be next, but any announcements from members of the public?
Can I ask a quick question? Who's running our TV or sound this evening? Does anybody else hear that echo?
There is a little bit of one, yeah. They can probably hear us. Hopefully they can turn it down just a
Okay.
bit.
Thanks.
Okay. I don't see anybody excited to make an announcement, but so let's go to public comment. You can make a comment on a matter not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes if you'd like to. Matters on the agenda, but you'll have an opportunity to speak when the item is up. Yes, sir.
You want to go to the podium?
Please. And tell us your name.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Mark Steve. I reside in Clarkston. I live off of Paramus in Main Street on Squirrel Hill Court. Kind of backs up to the Baptist Church, back over by the substation where the police and fire is located. We have a serious issue that's been going on for, well, as long as we've lived there, about 2.5 years now, is we're getting excessive water. And the water is coming from the Chickadee Bird Streets, and there's no retention area that's behind that subdivision that is the old high school, the middle school now. And the water is coming through our subdivision. In our subdivision, we have about 75 or 80 homes that are considered private. It's considered a private road. Half of Paramus is private, half of it is the township. Our roads are literally washing away. We have potholes that will swallow up a car, and it's all from the water that's coming from the Bird Streets and Chickadee subdivision that sits much higher. And it's not only doing that, it's depreciating our home value. It's running through our yards continuously. It's not just in the winter months when we get snow. Obviously, last year we had heavy rain, probably the most we've had in 100 years. And it was really noticeable, obviously, then. But I don't know if anybody's addressed it. I talked to Jerry, and Jerry told me to go to the Oakland County Water Commissioner's office.
Water Resource Commission.
Water Resource, correct, sorry. And I did that, and I found out from them that once the water comes to M15, they'll handle it. But they said getting the water there and controlling the water is the township's responsibility. So I want to put this on you guys to follow up with me if you could. Like I said, there's about 75 or 80 homes that this is affecting. And it's, like I said, it's destroying the road. It's serious erosion. The sheriff's department uses it daily. They drive by about every 15 to 20 minutes because they use Paramus as a thoroughway. And I'm surprised it hasn't been brought to someone's attention sooner than this. So if you guys could follow up with me, however the process goes, I'd like to get a conversation started, if we could. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do you have his contact info so we can follow up with him? Okay.
Anybody else? Public comment? So we're going to move to the consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request to approve the minutes from April 5. Number 2 is a request to approve April 12 check run, $440,605.35. Ratify the April 15 payroll, $280,343. Number 3 is a request to adopt a proclamation recognizing the month of May as the Mental Health Awareness Month. Number 4 is a request to adopt a resolution for the 2022 West Nile virus mosquito-borne disease CTV reimbursement program. Number 5 is a request to approve the 2022 budget amendment number 7, which is to pull unspent money from 2021 into 2022 from various departments. Are there any questions or desire to pull any of these off, or is there a motion to approve? We can approve all of them at once, items 1 through 5.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the consent agenda, items 1 through 5?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Hey, we move to the regular business agenda at this point, and we have items 1, 2, and 3 are essentially the same project. And you could discuss the whole project if you'd like, or if you want to discuss them one at a time. You probably have your script one at a time.
Sure, yeah, we do one at a time.
Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. As the board's aware, the Department of Public Works for quite a few months now has been working on with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan. This loan is to rehab 3 of our aging pump stations that we have. They are Hidden Lane, Majors, and Myers. These stations were installed in the early 70s, and they have their lifespan is up. You know, they've run their course. So we embarked on the endeavor to rehab these stations, and we're going to do that through a state revolving fund loan to do this. Excuse me. So tonight, there's a couple of things. The first two, actually the first 3 items on the regular agenda are all related to this project. This first one right now that I would like to present to the board, this is the request to adopt the resolution to issuance of the sanitary system sewer revenue bonds. Now, the way the program works, and tonight, just so everybody knows, have Eric McLaughlin, attorney with Dickinson Wright, who is our bond counsel for this. We also have Stephen Hayduck, who is with Benzinski and Company. It looks like Robert's there too, from the company as well. And they are our financial advisors. And we also have our engineering firm here. So we got the whole team here to answer any questions that you might have in regard to this process. So I just want to tee everything up for everybody to understand where we're at. The first piece, and this is a state requirement, and Eric can jump in if he needs to, is that it's there's resolution to issue the bonds. I believe this is the final piece that we need for this, for the bond issue, and that's what we're here for, to get approval from the board to do this. This will give us the green light. We're going to get $4 million in bonds to do this project, and it'll give us the funding to do that.
Okay. Any questions?
Eric, did I cover everything?
I'd like to talk about the resolution here while we're on it. So the resolution before you is a revenue bond resolution.
Excuse me, Eric, can everybody hear?
No.
Can't hear it real good.
Can we get the volume increased?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see.
Stefan, can you move the volume up? Let's try it again.
All right, can everybody hear me now?
That's better.
That's better.
Better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. The resolution before you tonight is a revenue bond resolution. Authorizes the issuance of revenue bonds up to $4 million to pay the cost of the project, or a portion of the cost of the project. It establishes a structure for receiving revenues and sequestering them to be used for paying the debt. And it also delegates authority to the supervisor and the clerk and the treasurer and other proper authorized officers of the township to sign the necessary documents, to take the necessary actions that are required to close the bond issue through the MFA. The one thing that this resolution does not do, and it should do, is pledge the township's limited tax general obligation, full faith and credit, as a backstop to the revenue pledge. That is being used in this deal to satisfy the MFA's requirement for a credit rating. By adding the limited tax general obligation pledge, it avoids the need for paying for and receiving a credit rating in connection with the issuance of these bonds. So again, the bond resolution does pledge the net revenues of the system. It does not pledge the limited tax general obligation, full faith and credit of the township, but it should. So the options that I have that I would like to present to you tonight are to adopt the resolution as is and come back at a subsequent meeting, either a special meeting or a meeting in May, to adopt a supplemental resolution to add that pledge, or to amend this resolution from the dais this evening, and then I would provide a conforming resolution for certification by the clerk and publication in the newspaper as required by Act 94. Bobby Benzinski and Stephen Hayduck and I were discussing the resolution just before the meeting and discovered that this was omitted from the resolution, and did not have time to talk to Dave. Dave, I'm sorry that we did not have a chance to give you a call in a few minutes before the meeting. But that is the solution, the 2 solutions that I'm presenting to you tonight. The resolution would authorize the issuance of bonds, pledge the net revenues. It should also pledge the limited tax general obligation, full faith and credit, but it does not. And I have offered you 2 options to correct it tonight. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question too.
Gary?
Eric, if we postpone until the next meeting, we only have one meeting in May due to the election, which is the 17th. Is that going to cause any issues with the time frame?
Yeah, I believe that may fall out of the MFA's and the DEQ's timeline for a Q3 closing. And I think that it would be better to either amend this resolution from the dais this evening or adopt this resolution and come back with a supplemental to add that limited tax pledge later. But to push the whole resolution, I would not recommend.
So Eric, what is the difference in terms of the impact to the township of including the full faith and credit pledge and not, is it interest rate?
Well, what it is the MFA requires a credit rating in connection with these issues. And if you don't have that satisfied, then you have to apply to the credit rating agency and get a credit rating. And there is, then there's an expensive fee to pay to get that process done. We were not planning on doing that with this issue. And so we were going to use the limited tax general obligation pledge to satisfy the requirement without having to apply for a separate credit assessment through the rating agency.
Got it.
So if I
So it would be
understand,
delay and cost.
so if I understand you correctly, we can approve the resolution presented tonight, and then we can come back then on the 17th and approve the amendment or the supplemental
Yes.
and still fall within the time frame and not endanger the process?
Well, that would be up to me and Zinzinski and company to work with Eagle and MFA to see if that would meet their needs for timing. If it would not, then we would ask for a special meeting.
Okay.
Can we just add the language as it's read into the motion to approve the addition of that?
Eric, do you have the language?
I can prepare the language for the board. The language would be the township would hereby pledge its limited taxable faith and credit as additional security to payment of the bonds in the event that the net revenues are ever insufficient to pay the debt service on the bonds. The limited taxable faith and credit pledge would be subject to the township's constitutional and statutory taxing limitations, meaning no tax could be levied that was beyond any rate that's already authorized. And then there would be a couple of conforming resolutions in the resolution where it recites that the bonds are not a general obligation of the township.
Yeah.
So that language would be stricken. So there'd be two instances where that would be stricken, and we'd add a paragraph in affirmatively stating that the township pledges its limited taxable faith and credit obligation.
It sounds a little cumbersome
Yeah.
to do from here. Kerry?
It would be one motion to amend the resolution as presented and as described, and then a second motion to adopt the resolution as amended.
I understand that, but we really don't have the language and the places in the resolution, and it's a little cumbersome, I'm afraid. Especially for something $400,000. $4 million.
I was gonna say.
We do have a special meeting we scheduled today for May 10th. Would that fall within the time frame if we were to add that to that special meeting?
We would confirm that with MFA and Eagle, but I believe it would.
Perfect. Good idea.
Okay.
Let's do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up. I
I think we should take
think
one.
Eagle will entertain that, Mike, don't you think, with the, because they understand that the timeline's a little,
We'll have to get it confirmed with the, Mike Lefkin with PLC.
Sorry.
by the way.
I don't think it's been published as a.
We would have to confirm that with Eagle, but I believe
I'm just guessing.
with approving the resolution as is tonight and understanding that we're gonna go back to a future meeting, they'd be understanding.
can we do, is there anything wrong with that, Eric? If the board is willing to do that tonight? Approve the resolution as is with the condition that we
No
come back
notices.
with an amendment to
Yes.
it?
You could approve this resolution as is this evening with the understanding that we would bring a supplemental resolution to amend this one at the May 10th special meeting.
No
How about we
notices.
have Dan weigh in on this?
Yeah. Dan, any problem from your standpoint?
No, I mean, I think the board has a joint meeting on Thursday.
But we don't have public notices that would be
No,
required,
but
do
it
we?
could be added.
It could, all right. Would that work
I
now?
mean, unless you're not comfortable with that.
Well, if we're gonna have a meeting on the 10th anyway.
Okay, if that's good enough, that's fine.
Yeah. I think that'd be a little cleaner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
give adequate notice.
Well, in this case, I'd like to request that we do approve the resolution as presented with the condition that there will be a supplemental amendment to that resolution in the May 4th or 10th meeting,
May 10th.
May 10th.
Okay, any other discussion or questions by board members? Any questions by members of the public? Anybody else online like to weigh in? All right, is there a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as presented, knowing that we have an amendment to that resolution at our meeting on May 10th of 2022.
Second.
For resolution 2022-006.
Correct. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, recognizing that we are going to revisit this on the 10th, and hopefully that will be timely. And if not, I'm sure Eric will let us know if the 10th doesn't work. All right, also, still on the same project, though, we've got item number 2, the request to adopt a resolution tentatively awarding a construction contract for this project.
Yes, this MAFE is for the tentative awarding of the contract. This is another part of the application process for the state revolving fund loan for part 3. Mike, you can help me out with the process of this. The state requires that contracts be signed. They want to know everything in place on who's going to be doing the project before it gets started. So this is part of the application process for it, and I believe this will complete part 3 of our application process for this. So this is a resolution, another resolution that goes to Eagle to identify that we are moving forward with this project, and this is our tentative, our contractor that we're going to have do it. I thought it was kind of the cart before the horse thing, you know, but
Right.
the next, you know, but that's what they want. That's how they do things there.
Okay? Any questions by the board?
I think we talked about this at a previous meeting, so, about this process.
Yes. Any members of the public want to weigh in on this? Okay, is there a motion?
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-007 for a tentative award of construction contract for wastewater system improvements, CWSRF project number 5753-01 in the amount of $4,435,000 from VIL Construction Incorporated, contingent upon successful financial arrangements with the CWSRF program as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, so that's 2 out of 3. Dave, you're doing pretty well so far?
Yeah, hanging in there, right?
Yeah. The third of 3.
Third one here is kind of the cart before the horse that I thought that was the order. But this is to award the contract to VIL Construction to construct this project, to do this project for us. This project was competitively bid and fell in line with everything required through the township's procurement policy. Full disclosure, we did only have one bid, but this was very, very technical job. There's a lot of work out there right now. And after reviewing their applicant and reviewing the work that they have done previously, and consulting with our engineering firm DLZ, they did recommend that they're more than capable of doing it, and they are a good company that we were going to bring forward. And they did make their recommendation that we did award the contract to them. I just want to make that clear that, you know, we did only have one bid, and we did extend the bid too for an extra week. But right now with ARPA funds and other projects, there's lots of work out there, and this is not an easy job. Let's face it, anything with sewer is not easy. It's actually, they call it technical, but it's tough. These are tight spots, and quite frankly, there's only really a few companies out there that really get into doing these types of things. VIL is definitely one of them. So we're quite happy with the proposal they did get. And it is $435,000, or it's $400,000 over the bond amount, and make sure that's clear and on the record. We're going to use the difference from the bond. Anything that bond doesn't cover, we'll use for capital funds that we do have, and or ARPA money, and we can adjust our budget accordingly. I ran numbers through Rick, and he says we have no problem with accommodating that. Is that correct, Rick?
That's correct.
So before you, is to award the actual construction contract to VIL Construction. For this
My assumption is that the award would be subject to all the financing being approved and all that.
Correct. Once previous things that we just talked about, those will all have to be in line. They will not get no notice to proceed or anything of the sort until all our financing and all of our requirements through the state and the Michigan Finance Authority are in line, signed, dotted, sealed, and ready to go.
Very good. Okay, any questions, board members? Carrie?
Just for clarification, and it's been cleared through the state that they will accept just the single.
That is correct.
Just wanted
Yeah,
to-
we have verification.
Thank you.
That's a great
Thank you.
point. We specifically asked them that, they had no problem with this. In fact, it should be in your board packet that they did give acknowledgement that we may proceed with the project. And actually, Mike sent the email and specifically asked them that question right there. And
Thanks,
they had
Mike.
no problems with that. So not only is the state happy, township, we did go through all the motions in compliance with our own procurement policy, so we should be good to go.
Great. Any other
We're
board
confident
members
we're
have
good to go.
questions?
Appreciate your efforts.
No, thank you. We appreciate the guidance on that.
Okay, any members of the public? You've had 3 chances now. All right. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to accept the construction bid proposal for the 2022 Clean Water State Revolving Loan Project number 5753-01, received by VLL Construction Incorporated of Sterling Heights, Michigan, in the amount of $4,435,000, plus an additional contingency amount, 6%, of $266,000, for a total project budget of $4,701,000, and authorize the supervisor to sign the contract as the authorized representative of the township.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion by the board? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you navigating these waters with me on this one, so.
Okay.
And sewers.
and sewer. Good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Item number 4 is a request to refer to the Planning Commission a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance that deals with access for boat docking and mooring. It's a proposed amendment of section 11.8 of the zoning ordinance. And this is a request that I am making. As everybody knows, we've got beautiful lakes in this township, and lakes are, or can be, both a blessing and a curse. Lakes are a blessing, and they make the community a better place, more attractive, a great tax base, and all of those things, as everybody knows that pays taxes, lives on a lake. But at the same time, especially in all sports lake, there's the potential for overcrowding of boats and things like that. And so there's safety issues, there are natural resource issues, and that is not just a lake in Independence Township, these are lakes throughout the state of Michigan. Supervisors are really approached to solve, or try to solve, many problems. One type of thing would be roads, another would be drainage, that we've heard this evening. But recently I was contacted based upon a concern by lakefront owners with regard to boat docking regulation in the township. And this was a situation that came to my attention talking to people from the Deer Lake Homeowners Association. They're particularly concerned about a large piece of property on the south end of the lake that has got considerable lake frontage and is probably very close to being proposed for some type of development. And the concern is how many boats can be placed there, how many will be placed there, what type of regulatory process will this go through, and things of that nature. And this happens to be a subject that I'm very familiar with. I did a study for the Department of Natural Resources on exactly this subject, and I have 3 cases in the Michigan Supreme Court on the subject, so it's something that I'm quite comfortable with, and I was comfortable to review our ordinances on a preliminary basis. I mean, ultimately, if the board does refer this to the Planning Commission, Dan Kelly's office will weigh in on this as well. And the fact that they haven't weighed in at this point is not a reflection at all on Dan's office. That was just something I would really like to make a contribution in this area to the township. It's something within my wheelhouse. And of course, the township knows all too well that situations involving boat docking on lakes can result in disputes, and disputes between property owners as well as disputes between property owners and the township. And those are the kinds of things that are to be avoided if possible. And a very, very clear ordinance would be helpful in that regard. And so in that vein, I've drafted a revision to section 11.8 of the zoning ordinance with a view of attempting to make these regulations clearer and using language that has been applied by the courts over many, many, many years. There's no intent whatsoever to change the fundamental policy of the township as expressed in 11.08. No intent to open up old issues, old wounds, you might say, that we've experienced in the past. This would all be for new issues. And the request is to refer the proposed amendment to the Planning Commission for regular consideration and then recommendation back to the board.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to jump in before we went too far. And without weighing in on thoughts on the content, I did read enough of it that certainly appears to me that it has a significant benefit to riparians, because we're trying to reduce boat traffic on lakes.
Sure.
I'm a riparian on Walters Lake, and certainly reducing boat traffic is a benefit to me, and I think that's something that has to be stated. When we get into this thing, I think I would recuse myself. But before I do that, I do want to comment about the motion itself. I do have concerns that we've brought a motion without legal review ahead of time. It seems to be, in my 10 years, I've never seen any amendment considerations that were brought already written, and certainly notwithstanding your skills, you're without doubt very, very qualified on this type of information, that our duty to let the Planning Commission take the actions they take, we appoint them, but they do their job. To me, if we've gone in the wrong direction and giving them something that we're already saying, here's what we want you to do, we're already telling them what to do in some, certainly they could interpret that, in my opinion, that, well, they've already given this to it. To me, we're not following what the normal process would be for someone who wanted us to change an amendment, and that does concern me, that we shouldn't go outside of our process. And so I'm concerned about that, but I think my first duty is to ask the board if they would have a motion on me recusing myself, or ask our attorney whether or not that's appropriate for me to do that in this situation.
Dan?
All right, so, basically the law with regard to a recusal is to state what the board member believes is the conflict. If he feels personally that his benefit from a vote would benefit him financially or otherwise, and that's going to affect his ability to vote, he asks the board to recuse himself, but ultimately it's up to the board. I don't think there's any hard, fast rule other than direct financial benefit from a contract that's being awarded by the township board. I think what Trustee Brown is saying is that there's some benefit to him by reducing boats on lakes, and so it's for the board's consideration.
Thank
Would
you.
be my advice.
So I would say that Walters Lake has a parcel of some 40 acres on that lake with 1,500 feet of frontage that's privately owned. And if this change in ordinance, while I don't know, I'm not getting into the details of the ordinance, but clearly if what happens to this ordinance restricts that property from development, I mean, anybody who lives on a lake knows that probably benefits the other people that already live there. Now, I know a lot about past history and all this stuff. I'd love to participate in it, but there is the impact of that, and I think the board has to decide whether they want me to continue to participate.
But there's other riparians on the board as well, so if he recuses himself, does everybody else need to
No,
recuse
that's
themselves?
individual.
My understanding of the law is that it's up to the individual board member as to whether or not that vote. Now, there are statutes, but I don't think that this particular incident involves those statutes. Buying property, contracts with the township, but not in this case.
Right. Carrie?
I think at this point, we're not making any decisions to change anything at this point to refer it back to the planning commission, so I wouldn't think that I wouldn't be in favor of recusing you at this point. Maybe after the planning commission has reviewed it and has come back to the board for action. At this point, we're just referring it back, so I don't see that
Yeah.
but
And I'm inclined
others may feel differently.
to agree with that because, as I mentioned, this doesn't really change the policy of the township. There is already a section 11.08 that has this general intent. It's just stated in a way that I think could be clearer and in a way that might avoid further conflicts. So,
Good
but-
enough. I'll accept that. I'll move forward, but I just wanted to be very clear that I felt there was
That's fair.
potential for that conflict.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Thank you. And on the other comment, in terms of process, the initiation of an amended ordinance by the board, sending it to the planning commission is not really at great variance from a process that is used on a regular basis throughout the state. So obviously, the board doesn't have the authority to merely adopt this ordinance. It has to be referred back to the planning commission, and the planning commission can do whatever it wishes with it. The planning commission could say, we don't need it, or we're gonna make a lot of changes to it, et cetera. But that's up to the planning commission, really.
Okay, but just a quick question. So, Paul, do you say that the township attorney didn't look into this? Is what you
There's been no legal review. It's on the MAFE.
Yeah, not yet. And what I said was that it's gonna be, if the board passes this or approves this, it would be sent to the planning commission, and that's when Dan's office would weigh in.
Okay, but sometimes I believe if we start with Dan, like Paul stated, we can save money because we got something already more, solid. That's what I think. Because besides, I see here, the key point is to provide clarity. This is not intended to make a significant change of the policy. So what are we changing here?
Changing basically
Exactly.
the way the ordinance is structured.
Okay.
The way it's structured and the language used. The courts over many years dealing with what is known as riparian rights, people that have rights based upon their frontage on water, the courts have used certain language, and I think in order to rely and relate fact situations to those cases, there's an advantage to having the particular language in there.
Okay, because right here in Part B, it says, keyhole water access should be prohibited, except as many be permitted and approved under subsection C and D below, which is already clear, it already eliminates multiple people from access. It's already there, though.
That's, the policy is there.
Yes, it's
Exactly.
there. It's
That-
there.
Yeah,
So
so
why we
it's not
change it?
changing the policy. It's really changing the way the language is set up, the language is structured, making things clearer. I think it provides a few more standards for the planning commission to consider if somebody comes in and proposes a special land use with a number of boat docks to serve people off the lake.
So, can I ask another question there, Jerry?
Sure. If you're
And
done-
maybe I'm not,
Jose, you're
Sure,
done?
sure, sure.
maybe I'm not reading it right, but the original document discussed a single pier and two watercraft for every 100 feet of linear frontage. And when I'm reading the amendment, it says it's going to be calculated with one boat, with a boat for every 100 feet, which would be a 50% reduction. It would be reducing from two what already exists. Is that what we're doing? Because that would be a
It's up
significant,
to the planning commission.
I understand, but that would be a significant change, would it not? To say we're going to go from two boats to one boat on 100 feet of frontage? Or is it a typo and it wasn't meant to be that way?
No, it's intended to be one boat per 100 feet, which is basically a very standard provision throughout the state.
Then that's a significant change.
But it's up to interpretation. That's a
Well-
significant change.
Okay, hold on.
I'm sorry. You also mentioned there was considerable frontage on the parcel we're talking about. I believe they've got less than 100 feet, in the range of 80 lakefront. For the parcel. As a straight line or as it meanders? Have they been before the planning commission before to try and get marinas for that property?
Not that I know of.
Because my recollection is that they tried to come and they were told they couldn't do it because the keyhole ordinance is already there.
That was many years ago, yes. So I don't remember the exact circumstances, but in the late 2000s, there was an item brought before the planning commission for that property, so, which it did not move forward, so.
I have a question or comment. My concern was about the process of this too, because in the same evening, we've been having our multiple readings about changing the political sign ordinance for people to be able to say something. And I just think that even if it is a couple words, it might be a couple words that makes a big difference, like you said, in terms of interpretation. So I'm not comfortable going out of process for this, that's all. That's just how I feel.
What is out of process? I don't understand what you mean by out of process.
Technically changing the ordinance, even though you're changing some words and you're saying it's not a big change, I feel like it would be a big change.
Yeah.
Well, but if the board approves this, it would not be changing the ordinance. It would merely be referring it to the planning commission.
Why doesn't it start with them then? I guess that's where I'm confused. Who brought this up?
I did. As I mentioned, I was visited by people that have a very big concern about the situation with the ordinance. Remember, the township had changed or amended the ordinance after the last difficulty with groups on the lake. And so now the question was, is the ordinance satisfactory, or does it potentially create jeopardy, or are there ambiguities? And as I read the ordinance, there were enough things that could be improved, and I'm not criticizing anybody that created the original ordinance, but there could be things that could be improved, and I thought it was worth sending to the planning commission for consideration.
I think the only difference for the board members, Jerry, is that you put in all your changes here. So it looks like you're presenting a motion to change it right now. I'm just trying to interpret
Yeah,
what I
right.
think is happening.
But,
so.
but of course, that I'm not doing that.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that, to me, you're saying you want to send this ordinance back to the planning commission for changes, and these are the types of changes you would like to see.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, that's, no, Paul, I'm just paraphrasing what I've been
Sure.
listening to.
That's helpful.
And Paul was reiterating that he thought, well, you're like telling the planning commission what you want to change. in a way, I guess, it's hard to say what you want changed if you don't take a stab at doing that.
That's right.
So.
Thank you. Anybody else on the board?
We'll just,
Yes, Paul.
so I was here, and again, I know right now that there are a lot of folks in this room who've spent a heck of a lot of money in the last 10 years, 12 years, since 2011, when a ticket was written before any of us were on the board, regarding what some felt was a key holding violation, and opinions can vary, and that thing's been all the way through the courts now. But what really bothers me is you folks all spent a ton of money, the other folks spent a ton of money, and the township spent $300,000 in attorney fees because we just couldn't figure out how to get people to have an agreement. And I believe folks have a right to have what they want to do, and there's always two sides to these things. I just don't want the township in the middle of it again. We got a $5 million liability, pension liability for our first responders. $300,000 would have been pretty nice to pay some of that down. And so it bothers me that we seem to be going right back in the direction of figuring out how can we change things to have the risk of more potential conflicts. And I just feel like when it comes to these types of disputes, we need to be very careful in getting involved. Because $300,000, and you folks spent probably just as much as we did, and it started in like 2011, it didn't eventually get solved until 2019. And that's a terrible place to have to be. And I feel bad for everybody who was involved in this thing, and I'm just not gonna get into what eventually happened, because people can go look up the case and find out. I don't feel that as an elected official, I'm not elected to be a judge. We create ordinances, and when there's issues related to fairness and equity and those things, I don't believe that's the job of this board to try and take those actions. And I'm terrified we'll end up in that position again. Now, the reason, and I was very much in favor of removing the dock references that we were requiring, permits for docks that people had to put in. When I bought my property in 2003, I wanted to do a seawall and a beach, and I had to apply for permits to the DEQ, and I was awarded my permits. I then had to apply for permits at the township for the exact same thing. I didn't know any better. I paid my stuff, I got my stuff done, and I moved on. When I became an elected official, I started questioning some of that. Because, and the question I asked was, so we have consultants come in and evaluate my paperwork that comes into the township to approve it. And I asked, how many times have we ever not approved these requests from residents who were already approved by the DEQ? And the answer was never. And so to me, it was like, why are we doing this? Why, if the DEQ handles it, why are we making people jump through the same hoop? And for me, I was talking about seasonal docks and beaches and seawalls. If we're never going to ask people to get the permits, because I don't think we ever did have people hardly ever apply for permits, even though it was required, and we just felt like we shouldn't be in the dock business because we just get neighbors arguing with each other. And in my opinion, the DEQ has plenty of power when people do things that interrupt navigable waterways or disturb bottoms, of the seas. And the folks in this room are very educated about these types of things. Some of them better educated probably than the board, withstanding the supervisor, who has more knowledge than probably all of us combined related to these things. I don't like getting back into this business, and to me, we have a keyhole ordinance that should do just fine with preventing any massive docks going in on a property that only has 200 feet. And I'm also a little bit concerned that we're talking about changing an ordinance and actually speaking about a specific property which we're hoping to affect. And I don't know what the ramifications are of that from a legal standpoint. But it concerns me. I guess that's all I have to say.
I can just respond to the one point, and that is relying on the state to adequately cover marinas. I can tell you from my own experience that the state the state has nowhere near enough manpower to deal with these issues throughout the state, and they refuse to do it. I'm familiar with a situation in West Bloomfield Township recently on Middle Straits Lake where a user, Long Beach, came on, and they have traditionally had like 40 boats on their beach, and now they want 80. And the DNR said, well, you want 80, and you know, that may have an impact on riparian rights, but that's not our business. But it is their business, but they're just not doing it. So the DNR referred it back to West Bloomfield Township to make the tough decision. So, and I can tell you that the DNR is not going to make the tough decision. And if you want the tough decision to be made, it's going to have to be made here. Anybody else on the board? Anybody from the public would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Gene English. I live at 7950 Dixie Highway, where I have resided for over 30 years. Of the last 15 plus years, I have been the president of the Deer Lake Property Owners Association. After reaching out to several other lakes in the township, our DLPOA board found that we all shared the same concerns regarding lake safety. In fact, as I look in this group, there's a lot of the people that I spoke to. The general consensus was that the current ordinance regarding lakes access for boat docking and mooring could be improved to better protect the safety of our lakes. In fact, with more clarity, the ordinance would be less likely that there would be lawsuits challenging the ordinance. This is why we took our concerns to Jerry Fisher. After all, Mr. Fisher is considered to be a renowned expert in this area. In fact, he was commissioned by the state of Michigan, or the DNR, as I realized tonight, to create the guidebook for key hoeing ordinance. In regards to what Mr. Brown said, he was part of the people who were supporting the Knolls when the whole ticket was written, and the township, instead of doing their duty to follow the ordinances and the rules, they created a passage for a special ability to override the ordinance and give them 10 votes, as it turned out, which they had never really showed up with those 10 votes. But more importantly, the township is who we look to protect our rights. Mr. Brown, if somebody on your lake that you live on, right, let's say right next to you, had a dock, and all of a sudden, a couple people in the subdivision wanted to start parking the boats on that dock, and they did.
That's happened.
It's happening.
It has happened. We called the building department, they had sent someone out, the boat wasn't registered to that homeowner, and they made him take it
This
off.
is on your lake?
Yeah, it happened like 10 years ago. It was
Okay,
before I was
well,
on the board.
It's happening currently, and part of the reason is the lack of clarification in your ordinance. Now, as Mr. Fisher pointed out, the state, the DEQ Eagle, doesn't have the manpower and has really no concerns for it. So all of you were elected to serve the people. Don't you think that's an important thing, to serve the people, rather than turn it over to an entity that doesn't even do anything?
Absolutely. It's keyholing. It exists already.
Okay, well, the key hoeing ordinance that was actually passed, which Mr. Fisher was actually on retainer at that time and was part of, in fact, Mr. Kelly was a trustee at the time, and I was part of the Deer Lake Property Owners at that time, and was pushing for this key ordinance to protect our lakes because of large lots that still exist on Deer Lake. But again, when it was passed, I had several officials at the township at the time, as well as attorneys that I knew, and including Steve Joppich, who was the attorney at the time, who said it really lacks a lot of teeth. So what you have right now isn't very good. It lacks clarity, and it actually opens up the case for lawsuits because it doesn't have direction. It doesn't have clarity as to how the key hoeing ordinances should be carried out. So again, I hope you guys will give serious consideration to this by approving this item on the agenda tonight. And again, thank you all for your service in the township as trustees and board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? I see somebody rising in the back, somebody rising in the front.
I beat him. I'm Chuck Monk. My wife and I live on Deer Lake in the no-wake zone. I have a question and then I have a story. What restrictions are there, if any, on what boats can go on the lake? For instance, can somebody bring a 70-foot yacht onto Deer Lake and bring it on a 70-foot yacht onto Deer Lake? Is there any restriction about wake boats on Deer Lake? Is there any restriction about what type of boats can go on here? I know there's a lot of interest on the volume of the boats, but I think there should be some clarification of limitations of what size. And one of the reasons that I'm up here talking is for not just the lake, but I'm talking about personal safety. My wife, Linda, likes to kayak. She loved to go around Deer Lake next to the shore with her kayak, just fiddling around and having a great time, until a wake boat went by her at very close range and she was swamped. The water went right over her head. Fortunately, she wasn't capsized, and fortunately, she didn't drown. However, she now won't go all the way around the lake. She will stay only in front of our place in the no wake zone. So she's been restricted because of the types of boats that are allowed on the lake. So I guess my question is, Mr. Fisher, in the regulations, are there any regulations as to what kind of boats you can have on the lake, as well as how many?
Yeah, these regulations on the type of boat and what kind of equipment, engine and all that, that is really subject to exclusive jurisdiction of the state. Now, if we wanted the state to pass any particular kind of ordinance regulation in that regard, we could ask them to come down here and have a public hearing on it. But it's really up to the state. That's a state.
So there are no regulations at this time?
There are no regulations, and they are very slow to pass regulations like that.
So my friend can bring his 75-foot yacht on the lake. Is that correct?
I'm not so sure how we can get it in there.
What's the draft?
No,
It must be a catamaran, because otherwise he's never going to.
You know, I don't think Deer Lake is a proper lake to be having huge boats on. I originally used to live on Heather Lake, which was electric motors only. And when I was on the board, there were a certain amount of people that wanted it to be an all-sports lake. And that was very violently turned down by the board and the rest of the owners. So I'm acquainted with what the board power has and what they can do. And I would hope that at some point we can have some sort of restrictions on what types of boats can be on the lake as well as the volume. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mark Pedersen, 6716 Almond Lane. Some time ago, many years ago, there were, at the Similar Beach Association, had applied to the DEQ for a permit to put in a marina. The marina was approved, and I'm just wondering if that's still in action. Is that still moving on? Because it's very close to the old Rose property or Gibson's property, whoever. I'd like to know if that's still a situation there.
We're not aware of anybody that's still
I have the
pursuing
permit
that.
at home if you'd like me to drop it off to you.
Sure,
Okay.
thank you. The gentleman in the back, I think it's his turn. thanks for making the long walk.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Fred Darris, and I live on Deer Lake. One of the disappointing things I hear from this board right now is the intent of the ordinances that were out there and the intent of what is supposed to be presented. I think, Mr. Fisher, you are doing an excellent job. I know you know the law because you co-wrote a ordinance type of thing to look at lake safety. One thing I haven't seen anybody on this board mention is lake safety. That's the whole purpose of why this ordinance should be approved and changed. It's not because we're sharing boats with somebody off the lake or on the lake. We're trying to limit the amount of boats on the lake so that it is safe for everyone. And people can share the lake. And people on our lake, we share the lake. We wanted to keep the beach open so kids could come on the lake many years ago, where this board wanted to close the beach. We said, no, we have to keep it. And so I did my own study 10 years ago. Some of you got copies of this that are on this board. And I did a study of Deer Lake. And Deer Lake is 137 acres total. Now, if you take out the wake zone, you take out the perimeter around the docks and things, it becomes 74 acres of useful lake for power boating. Now, 74 acres is a very limited amount to share. And Mr. Fisher, I followed your guidelines doing this, so it's a very simple process that it takes. And I will bet anybody on this board, that every powerboat lake in the township is over capacity right now. Every one. Because if you look at Oakland Lake, I know that people that live on Oakland Lake, it's worse than Deer Lake. Your lake, Mr. Brown, is probably well overboard on the amount of boats that allows. So I encourage you, Mr. Fisher, to continue your quest and support lake safety, because we shouldn't wait for somebody to die before we decide to change the law. And right now, we had a couple incidents on our lake where jet skis collided, and we had to have a service out there to help people out of there. And don't want to see another Ashley's Law to be put in so we can protect our lake. And let's not put blood on these papers just so we can get it approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respectfully comment?
Terry.
I'd like to just respectfully comment on what you said. Nobody here is disproving any of the lake safety. I'm just wanting this process to be followed in the appropriate way, how these ordinances are being changed and are supposed to be changed, because I don't want another lawsuit that I heard about years ago and spending our money saying you didn't do it the right way. So if Mr. Kelly says it's fine, I have no problem with it, but I don't think anybody on this board had any issue with the amount of boats there. It has to do with how this is written and how the process is being handled to get the ordinance changed. That's my only issue.
Mr. Kelly?
Well, okay, so I have not looked at Supervisor Fisher's recommendations. It's also possible that the supervisor simply send it back to the Planning Commission without an actual guide to the Planning Commission and have them discuss it, and possibly just list some issues as an alternative to rewriting the ordinance. But, you know, I don't have a problem with it going back to the Planning Commission, because ultimately it's coming back to this board. I note in the memo, it does indicate that at some point, I think after this motion, there was an intent to have my office review it.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to do that. I haven't done that as of yet, though.
Right. Anybody else?
I want to say something.
Jose.
Supervisor. Yeah. I agree with Trustee Alamatu. I just, I look at the language, I don't see a major change with the language. And my question always is, how we gonna protect you guys? It's our concern. I agree with Trustee Alamatu, and all of you. We wanna be effective, we're gonna protect you. And to be able to do that, in order to do that, we wanna do it right. My recommendation for me will be maybe or a township attorney to review it to a standpoint before we send it to the planning commission to have something solid. That will be my recommendation. I don't know if you guys think that will be the right move, but that will be my recommendation, just to start with Mr. Kelly to review this, put the right language, and maybe move it to the planning commission.
Well, when it goes to the planning commission, before the planning commission does anything with it,
Mhm.
Mr. Kelly's gonna review it.
Okay. Yeah, you know, in the end of the day, what we want is to protect them. We hear valid concerns, and I think we want to be effective, you know?
Well, that's why I prepared this, to be effective.
Yeah,
That's exactly why.
yeah, well, right, but if you see, I mean, I see the language is kind of similar. I guess what we want, they want to have some more clear. I mean, couple gentlemen asked a couple questions that we couldn't answer because it's not here, it's not specified. They want more clarity, and I think after we hear those valid concerns, I think we can prepare something much better and more in specifics as well. More clear language is what we're looking for.
More clear than it is now?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Can I
I'm
ask?
certainly not gonna argue at this point about whether the language is clear at this point, but did you have, well,
Well, I was going to ask a question. We have our Mr. Ottman here. I'd like to know if he's aware of any reports of boats in this past year being moored at single-family homes that were not owned by the homeowners. Well, I'm asking, I'd like to hear from the building department and what's happening with that. Because if in fact that exists and the township's not taking action on the existing ordinance, I have a problem with that. And I don't have any problem with someone who's upset if that doesn't happen. So I agree 100%. There's a keyhole ordinance that says they can't do that. You can talk about clarity or not. I am 100% in support of the keyhole ordinance that was in place back in '07, and that no one should be allowed to moor a boat at somebody's house and it's not their house, or they don't rent it or live there. I agree 100%. I'd like to know how much of that is happening and what we're doing about it.
Well, our enforcement department has not received any complaints in the last year or two about mooring of boats in a keyholing situation, so.
Thank you. And I would like to add one thing. You're good.
Okay.
That'd be
So
overnight mooring.
in my 7 years as treasurer, people many times came in and said, I've complained about this 3 times and they're not doing anything about it. Could be anything. I don't recall ever having a situation where I didn't get in the computer and look, and every complaint that was made was in that computer system. I mean, they are so good at that. I know people think that sometimes just because some action actually didn't get taken or it didn't get resolved, that no one did anything. They are, I mean, I would bet money on it that if a complaint is made, it is in the system on that property saying that a complaint was made. Whether it gets fixed, I don't know. But I will point out, you all feel like it's been reported, but he's saying that there hasn't been any reports in over a year. So maybe we're just not taking the actions we need to take with the existing laws.
I think the question that the people were responding to was whether or not there were boats docked there
That
that were not of the owners.
No, I
But-
asked him whether they had been
but
reported, and they all
let me
said
finish,
yes.
please. But I think the answer that, or the response that Mr. Ottwood was making is whether or not he had received complaints. The fact that there is docking of that nature is not the same as whether or not he has received complaints. That's the point I was just making.
I agree with that, but I think there's folks here that were surprised that he said there haven't been any complaints received. Because if we have a law that would already, in my opinion, deal with it, let's start providing the information, which is as easy as taking a picture of the boat's number and sending it to the township. In fact, it can be posted anonymously through the website. You can load the picture up and send it in and let them do their job. And I prefer to see that happen rather than us going through and start changing ordinances again.
All right, anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Norm Frashke, 7199 Deer Lake Court. First off, we are blessed with great lakes, around us. I live on the lake. The issue that we have here is that the lakes are small. The lakes do not have the capacity to carry every resident in Independence at one time. It just isn't. And so that's what's driving a lot of these points. And I really like the discussion beforehand, because now we know some of the opinions before, and we're able to express and address some of them. And Paul, I'd like to address some of your points that you made before. In the past, you've never reaccused yourself on lake issues. This is the first time that you've offered that to the board that I know of. I don't claim to have seen every, lake issue that was in the front of the board, but the ones that I was at, that was never an issue with you. The next thing that is blatantly wrong that I want to correct is that the homeowners of Deer Lake did not start a lawsuit that cost the township $300,000. That was the township. And you have to admit that the township filed the suits in the courts against the Deer Lake properties owners and the other party. Is that correct?
I don't have to admit that.
Well,
I don't agree with you.
okay, I mean.
I'm not gonna get into a debate with you over things that clearly we disagree on.
But please do not state it the other way then, that we cost the township $300,000. That is not the case.
I'm entitled to my opinion.
Okay, but please correct that for the next meeting, that we did not file it. That came from the township to the other parties to correct the situation. Because the township came and said, oh, we have two parties that are arguing, we don't know how to deal with it. Courts handle it.
So Norm, I think you should continue with your
Okay.
presentation.
Right. So, the other thing with lake safety, I'd like to point out another item that is very important, is at the time that this was going through the planning commission, the ZBA, from the case that you're talking about, not once did the capacity of the lake come into play. In fact, the expert that was at the planning commission and the ZBA, the township lawyer, or not the lawyer, but the consultant, said 6 boats was right. The planning commission approved 10. I think you were on that vote. The issue comes is, well, how many boats are safe? How can you approve without knowing the knowledge of what is safe on the lake? How can you approve something? And that's what I was seeing happening in this process. All right. So I think what's important, and I think what every township member needs to see is, and especially the trustees, is that there's a lot of interest in this room and around of this topic. And I think it's important to say, okay, there's enough interest there, and I'm representing these folks and the others in the township. There must be enough interest that this goes back and we take a look at it. And I think we have the very good opportunity having Jerry as an expert that knows what is going on and what has gone on and the history there with the state of Michigan to address this point. But I just want to make, I just needed to come up here to correct these items. And one more point. When this was going down, I believe everybody knows this article where Andy Hartz, who's the supervisor at the Eagle or DEQ, it washes his hands of it, right? So there's no one coming in, swooping in to save our little lakes and to save the in enjoyment. They're washing their hands. We have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to weigh in on this?
I do real quick, but I'm gonna be 30 seconds. I'm John Wiedemann, 7928 Dixie Highway. So a couple years ago, probably within 2 years, you're right, complaints probably weren't filed because nothing happened in past years. So that's good to know that we can do that again. You guys will take action. But everybody keeps talking about Deer Lake. It's not a Deer Lake issue. I grew up in Clarkston on Whipple Lake. I've been on Walters Lake. They're becoming crazy. I don't know what you guys have seen in the last 4 or 5 years. You live on the lake, you're seeing the traffic increase, more boats coming on, more people docking all over the lakes. I think if you guys could provide more clarity to the ordinances, we'll protect our revenue. The tax money's our money. So when the township spends 300 grand, I look at that, that's my money too. So we don't want to see that happen. And I think we're going to have more lake issues just due to the crowdedness that's happening on all our lakes. Not Deer Lake, not Whipple, nothing specific, but everywhere. So I hope you guys can find a way to put clarity there so that we don't have these conflicts moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
20 seconds. My name's Matt Marsden, 6960 Hillside Drive. I have 3 young children that swim quite near the public access launch. I sit pretty much every day during the summer with those kids watching them swim, and I see the volume of boats that are dropped in at that public access point, unchecked. And here we are listening to a conversation about expanding more boats on the water for people that don't pay taxes on that water. And the safety issue is an issue because my 3 kids enjoy that every day in the summer. And to find out or hear that there's more boats that potentially could come in, or that we're not restricting or watching enough boats coming through the public access, the rule is as many slots are available for parking trailers as there. That's not regulated. You can't let high school kids manage that. To the former points of the other folks, there is a volume problem on Deer Lake, and it is dangerous. So please, consider that.
Thank you, sir.
I was just gonna say, I don't really have an issue with this being referred back to the planning commission. If the issue is the format that it was presented in, we could always address issues that were spoken tonight by the public and that the board members have, as we have kind of done in the past, and refer that as back to the planning commission to look into these several areas, and then with Kelly, the Kelly firm to investigate. We can go that way. But I do think this is something that should be referred back. Let the planning commission do their work. That's what they're here for. Have them go through the due process. Public then can attend the meetings and address their concerns there under the correct forum, and it would come back to us at some point, and then the board would have the power to approve it or deny it. I think that's just part of the process.
Right,
So.
right. Jose?
I agree with Kerry. I just want to know, I want to find out from Dan Kelly, or Township Attorney, what would be the most efficient process to hold them? I mean, I hear valid concerns tonight. I just want to get something that's more efficient, and we can, take care of them really well.
Could be an oxymoron, couldn't it? Asking a lawyer what's most efficient.
Well, I just want to.
You got more than one lawyer here.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at.
So we've talked a little bit about the process.
Yeah.
This is a zoning ordinance, which is often initiated at a board level. The supervisor has taken the time to put in some changes to the ordinance, and that's being sent back to the planning commission. Once it's back at the planning commission can open that up, they can restrict it. Ultimately, they're gonna make a recommendation back to us of what they like and what they don't like, and they can add it. So if I were to review it at this point, which I think the memo said, I would literally give the planning commission just some guidance on the fact that these are recommendations from the supervisor, not necessarily agreed to by the board, because all you're doing tonight is sending it back. So this is not our proposed changes, but these are recommendations by the supervisor to address these issues, and you're free to address other issues. I could even provide some of the comments that we heard here tonight. I think we all know what the issue is. The main complaint is volume. So, and I absolutely agree that Mr. Fisher has a long history with this, so his thoughts with regard to how to legally regulate boats on a lake, I would certainly take into consideration when I drafted my opinion, but I've done lake work as well in other communities, and there are some parameters, and there's some things, some do's and don'ts that we could provide to the planning commission. I think that's the most efficient way, but get it in front of a planning commission who will have a public hearing, and I'm sure all these same comments will come to the planning commission. Does that answer it?
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? I didn't mean to cut off the public from any further input. I don't see anybody. Anybody online? Care to speak? Okay, well, let's bring it back to the board then. If there's no further discussion by the board either?
I have,
Yes, sir.
So, I will readily admit, and I did not mean to insinuate that you guys made a lawsuit. Clearly, we did that. Clearly, we did, and that was not my intent to say that you did that. You asked me to re-express it, and I will clearly admit that you guys, a lot of you were here. It was very, very contentious. It never made me feel good, those meetings. It didn't. I mean, even tonight, Fred, all the respect in the world, but essentially we're saying we're going to have blood on our hands again, or put blood on the paper for this to happen. And none of that's true. None of it's true, and I will point out, we have, again, overcrowding from people dropping boats at their friend's house. That's reportable. We do it. It doesn't happen that often on Walters Lake, but when it does, somebody reports it, and they're made to take it out. So we're not using the tools we got already. When it comes to that launch, didn't we reduce the slots from like 10 to 8 at some point? I think we did, but I for sure know it is certainly not easy for younger employees of the Parks and Rec Department to try and regulate that launch. For sure, that's a problem, and I get that. I also would have a problem if people were launching their boats and taking the trailer somewhere else to let somebody else in. I don't like that. I support that. I support not allowing people to have their friends' boats at their friend's house overnight. Now, if they got a spot and launch it and go, but they got to take it out. They can't stay. I agree 100% on all those things. Okay. And I'll admit that maybe I'm a little cynical because we went through so much, all of us, everybody involved in this thing, for 9 years. And when it first started, I was brand new. I didn't know any better. It scared the heck out of me that everyone was mad at me. Believe me, you. It doesn't mean I don't care. And again, report these problems. I don't like the process that went through here. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen it before. But we've also never had a supervisor who was this much of an expert in a particular area. Now, I'm a CPA, but I was never going to come in here and change the township's financial statements. I wouldn't do it. I'm also not the level of Mr. Fisher here is related. It's not really apples and oranges because he's significantly more knowledgeable in what he's talking about than I would be about the community's financial statements. Doesn't mean we don't care, and that hurts when people just think, well, you're going to have blood on your hands. That's not fair to say it like that. Clearly, we don't want that. And I would just ask for people to be fair. Now, I don't have any problem, and is it wrong for the supervisor to take what's happened here without any recommendations and send it to the planning commission and say, we'd like this looked at? Do they have to have a referral from the board, or can they just take items? Mr. Supervisor?
Well, I could send it to the planning commission, but the typical process would be if the board is interested in helping this problem, give the direction to the planning commission to start the process. All set? Well, we have one more.
Can I comment?
Yeah, come up to the.
I think the blood on the hand, that's an extreme thing. I don't think that's right either. Just want to point that out. But I also think, and Ron, you can contest to that someone on your planning commission made the comment that they don't need a marina permit when they're doing that stuff. That's wrong. That's misinformed. They're not educated. That's the township board responsibility that the board members of the planning commission and the ZBA are properly informed of what the definitions are and when you need it and when you don't. The other issue is they're approving number of boats without knowing how many boats can be carried on the lake.
Are we
No
talking about
safety
about
study.
This prior court case?
Yeah, no safety study. No, okay, how many boats are launching? If we have the number of boats of the residents plus what's launching plus what's that, how many boats does that make? Now, how many boats are we going to approve? And then to go from 6 to 10, that was brutal. For against the recommendation of the expert that you guys paid to come in and give his opinion.
All right, now what we have to do is bury that hatchet. I understand, but we can't go backward. That's why I'm proposing this is to go forward in a positive way with clarity and get the job done.
I just had to make some comments, I guess, too.
Please.
I don't really have an answer. If I did, I would have given it 10 years ago. But basically, there's two facets to this. We talk about, safety and the volume of boats on the lake, which is a concern. Almost everybody that came up and spoke to that facet, the basic volume of number of boats that are on the lake, as well as the safety while those boats are there. So there's no doubt that safety is a key concern. But this ordinance has two facets to it. One, there's the property owner's right to have a boat or have a dock, and then there's also the number of boats that are on the lake. The property owner's right to have a dock and a boat has nothing to do with how many boats are on the lake. Those are like two separate entities. So for all the people here that are here that already have a dock and a boat, to say any new people that come in can't have a dock and a boat, those are property rights. Those are not have anything to do with this ordinance. So I mean, this ordinance here talks about what the property owners can have and how they manage their boat and dock. Okay, whether we have too many boats on the lake is a totally different story and a totally different issue. We need to, I think what we need is, and what we really, needed, because if we don't do anything to anybody on the lake that lives on the lake, the public access is the public access. So, I mean, you already said, if we get 8 boats in there and they're changing boats during the day, those boats that are coming in just off the public access could be overwhelming the lake by itself. But it's a public access lake, so, it isn't like we can just stop and not have public access. So there needs to be, I think, for safety and volume, that's a totally different ordinance or entity that we need to address compared to the property owner's right to have a boat or a dock. So that's my only thinking of what went on tonight. So.
One of the things that this proposal would address even more clearly than it is now is the prohibition of having somebody that is a riparian bring a friend or family's boat onto the lake, because that, I mean, if you think about it theoretically, it could double the number of boats on the lake, which I don't think anybody is interested in doing, because that would way overtax the lake, undoubtedly. So, and this really is intended to address a situation where somebody wants to use one beach to dock multiple boats. And, and certainly, if the beach is owned, there's a right to dock some boats. There's no doubt about it. That's your point, I think. And they have the right to dock boats. The question is, how many would be appropriate.
Are you talking about future?
Yes, future.
But how are they going to get past the keyhole ordinance?
Well, this ordinance.
How are they going to get past the existing keyhole ordinance that says they can't do it?
No, the existing ordinance allows it under subparagraph C and D. And this
under a special land use?
Yes, and this ordinance, as I say, doesn't dramatically change the policy. This also allows the planning commission to grant a special land use, but to set the parameters to take into consideration things like safety and natural resource preservation.
Well, so what's the point of the keyhole ordinance if they can just do it anyway? I thought that the only reason the one that happened was because they'd already been there prior to the ordinance being written. Can I get opinion from Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, it was a non-conforming use. Before the ordinance was adopted, they had that right.
Right.
Yeah, so
But
that's a
the
different.
Right, but the other parcel has never had a boat there or docks, so how would they get past the existing keyhole ordinance that says you can't put a marina in?
You mean the so-called
the property,
Gibson property?
Yeah, the property we're talking about.
Yeah, well, they would have a right to go in under the current ordinance and ask for X number of boats on that property.
To the planning commission.
Yeah.
The planning commission would look at the keyhole ordinance, would they not? And
Yes.
say, you don't qualify? They
Well, no,
they could, right?
They could qualify. It's in the discretion of the planning commission.
I had one other thought. What's the fine for someone violating the ordinance that doesn't allow you to have someone else's boat at your dock? How much is the penalty for doing that?
It'd be a civil infraction and injunction.
Right, so why don't we increase the penalty and make it have some teeth in it? So that when we take action, the homeowners are gonna be a little more concerned about doing it. It is a danger to let people do that, and it's not right either, because people are, taxpayers pay a lot of extra taxes for living on a lake. I know that, I do too, right? I don't like it when I see other people bringing their boats and putting them in, and I do say something, or usually somebody beats me to it. So why don't we consider making a more substantial penalty that will make people think twice? And can we not send notices out to people, riparian owners in the entire township and say, we've modified this, anyone who's having boats docked here that are moored overnight, that you don't own, face this penalty of $1,000 or whatever. Make it have teeth, and that, maybe that's an out-of-the-box thing.
Would that be part of the rewrite? Would that be part of the rewrite that?
I would have to rely on our legal counsel.
Yeah.
I mean, and I want to say a couple of things. So, on Walters Lake, we've got, our oldest person is Mrs. Wood. She's 100 years old. She's lived there since she was 35. So I'm kind of a lake historian. I love to get in my pontoon and go around, and if I see people I don't know, I usually pick them up and learn stories, tell stories. That's who I'm considered over there, kind of the tour guide of the lake. And so I learned a lot. I tell you, most of the time, we're probably the same as Deer Lake. Most days, it's not that busy. Most days, there's a couple, 3 or 4 boats out. There are weekends where you cannot pull tubers, especially on the holidays, because there's so many pontoons floating around, you just can't do it. So those are the busy days. You get 20, 25 boats. Actually, those days are more safe because no one can go anywhere. You're just kind of stuck. But I agree it's a problem when you have boats doing things that are wrong, like jet skiers jumping wakes. Super dangerous. It's illegal, and it's illegal for a reason. And myself or somebody typically jumps on that right away, and it's almost always not the homeowner who's doing it. It's one of their guests on their jet skis. In those conversations, I try to be nice about it, but sometimes the homeowners don't realize what their guests are doing. And so those communications happen too, and I'm involved in those. I do understand all your problems you've got. I'm not opposed to solutions. I have a little concern about the process, and I already brought that up, but I do like the idea of changing that penalty because we might be able to eliminate a lot of those problems by letting somebody get cited for doing it. And maybe it'll stop that.
Okay, all set?
That's it.
Anybody else? Okay, bring it back to the board then. Is there a motion by the board?
I have one thing I'd like to ask on this motion. Is it possible to have this motion indicate that the board is not weighing in on the content of the referral, but simply agreeing that it can be referred?
Sure, absolutely.
I think I'd be more comfortable if we did that because, again, I think we're a little bit out of the range of the process that I'm used to.
Okay.
And I'd rather have the planning commission just be able to look at it without the influence of thinking we said go do this.
Not a problem.
Can I just make the motion?
Yeah, please.
Make a motion to refer the zoning ordinance, section 1108, lake access for boat docking and mooring, back to the planning commission for review and recommendation to bring back to the board.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Can you just give us a minute? I think a few folks will leave.
Sure. Well,
No.
you know
The
what?
rules say you have to stay for the whole meeting.
Our next item is so fast that while you're leaving, it's the second reading and adoption, right?
Yes. Not gonna say anything of, no boats out of my mouth from now on.
Jerry, before you start, can I give you, these are all the plans, show all the sewer lines, show aerial, Google Earth. There's like 15 documents in there, will really help you guys.
Okay,
all right?
thank you.
So I'll see you next month.
Good to see you.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Would that cause trouble? Were we still in session? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies to the board, that was inappropriate.
So, is there a motion?
Yeah, let's continue. Can you do your gavel and just ask them to be quiet, please? They can leave quietly.
Well, it was my
Some of
fault,
them-
because I
some of them are still standing
continued when they were gonna leave.
Just start speaking and then hopefully they'll quiet.
Okay, so this ordinance was here 2 weeks ago for a first reading. It's really a simple change in the ordinance, but it's important, and especially with the elections coming up here. So this ordinance changes the amount of time for a political sign to be displayed from 30 days to up to 45 days. And according to state law, people can start voting 40 days before an election. So this allows people to actually have the sign up longer, and it's definitely something that is supported by case law, and we are asking that this be approved.
Any questions by the members of the board? Second reading. Members of the public? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading
Go ahead. He's up.
and adopt the ordinance to amend Charter Township of Independence Ordinance Code, Chapter 50 zoning ordinance revisions to Section 12.07D3 relating to additional expression of speech prior to a scheduled election as presented, and direct the clerk to publish notice in the manner prescribed by law.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Correct. Hold on 1 second. This is gonna apply right now with the current primary, right? How it is for state representative.
It should be effective before the May election. yes.
May election. Okay.
And this is for legally placed signs.
As long as we can get it in the newspaper,
That's-
published in
yeah,
time.
well,
It will be
that's-
fine for August, I'm not sure about May.
Yeah, we're gonna try to publish it as quickly as possible.
There's 30 days, I believe, correct, Mr. Kelly, that they can,
30, they can appeal.
yeah, so it would be after 30, so we wouldn't make the May, so this would make it for the primary and the general.
But
Okay,
the May one, you're already within 30 days, so,
correct.
It
that's what
doesn't
I'm saying.
matter.
It's too
Exactly.
late.
True.
Exactly, Terry.
so, yeah, signs can go out now for May.
Yeah.
Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Alamothu?
Yes.
Trustee Ritchie?
Yes.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Clerk Newbeck, yes. And Trustee Aliaga?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is number 6, the request to approve an amendment to the law enforcement agreement to accommodate another officer to serve as a school resource officer. This is something motivated primarily through the schools and their concern with regard to the avoiding a repeat of what happened in Oxford.
Correct. The school board, or the Clarkson School District is asking for one more deputy. Really, they need more than one, but one more deputy for a school resource officer position. In light of the Oxford shooting, you know, we have 10 schools, 2 of them in a different township that the Clarkson School District covers, so we have 2 deputies as it is right now, and we're asking for one more.
Yes.
Just had a quick question. I am in favor of the subject, but I'm wondering, not knowing the past, is this something that, or maybe we should look at going to in the future? We do have other communities outside of Independence that send students to our schools. Are they participating in the cost recovery here? I think that's something that we should possibly pursue.
That's great.
And that might also be something that we could help extend for further in the future if we could get some cost participation with the other communities.
We could request that now. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question, but we just cover, even though the schools, the actual physical school is in Springfield Township, it's part of the Clarkson School District, so that's why we cover it now, but that's a good
I
point.
do believe at many years ago, there was a census per se done of the students and where they lived and what schools they went to. And there was talk amongst the board, I'd have to relook that up to see if action was taken, but there was a percentage, so then it was kind of split up. Springfield Township paid 25%, you know, and that, so I think a census, we might have to get the schools involved with that, but I do think that that's something we should strongly consider.
That's a great point.
So, but I am in favor, of course, of adding another officer. I do think that it's important, and whoever's idea it was, I think there was a possibility of it being a female officer, because I think our other school liaison officers are both male. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't promise a female officer, we just can only, because there's a process of, you apply, and then you go through an interview process, and then you get a list of officers that are interested. I can't promise that, because there's also union issues involved with that.
Okay.
But we'll do the best we can.
I do just think it's an important facet, I think, that.
Yeah, we had one.
You're reaching another.
So there has been female officers in the past as part of this. So.
Yes, before Deputy Knopp is in the high school now, he replaced a female officer that retired. She was in the schools, and we have female school liaison officers in other districts in the county.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other?
I think just a little background. We cheated the Sheriff's Department out of really some background. That you've had meetings with the township and in the school system to review maybe safety procedures and other school
Correct.
issues. And this came out of the.
Correct. That's correct. Captain Hill, who had my position prior to being promoted to captain, it was right after the Oxford shooting, and they had just prior to that and just after that, they had some meetings with the school district, and this is what came out.
Yeah, this is like one of the recommendations that came out of those meetings to try and increase safety, security,
Correct.
Service for the
Correct.
school system. So I just thought for the public's.
Absolutely.
It isn't like they're just coming up and asking.
Absolutely.
For another officer. So.
Right.
Well done. Well done. Any other questions, comments? Terry?
Carrie was spot on, because that was going to be my question after I read this. I was thinking at home, where does the money come from? Because we're already paying our taxes into the school system and the township.
Yeah.
So is it like triple dipping? I don't know. And that was my biggest concern. I'm all about having the person there, 100%. I agree with that part. But mine was just when I read this, the 50% that the township's throwing in, where's that coming from? And my other question was, as far as the community schools go in general, weren't their enrollment down quite a bit?
That I have no idea.
You don't know? I was just curious, because that would make a difference in the money per student and all that in the long run.
All right. Any other comments?
Oh, we have a whole
statements?
bunch more. This isn't going away anytime soon.
I mean, I don't think there's any question that the taxpayers of the community would support having additional officers. And whether the money comes from the township's millage or the school's millage, to me, wouldn't matter to the taxpayer. Either way, the taxpayers are paying for this either way. I do want to make sure that there's some conversations with the school about what's going to happen as our police budget and our fund balance declines, right? At what point, at some point in time, it's possible that a millage has to be increased by either them or us. And so, at the end of the day, like I said, taxpayers I don't think they'll really care where it's coming from.
Right.
And I 100% support what we're doing. I am curious about the historical part of this, because my recollection's not great, but I think at one time the school paid for the resource officers in full, and then when the big recession hit, and thank you, when the big recession hit, they didn't pay for a while, and then during our first term, I think we said, listen, you guys, we saw what would happen to our police funding, and it was going to go down, and we reached an agreement for them to pay half. And so, again, I don't think taxpayers are going to care whether it's coming from that pocket or this pocket, but we do need to have conversations for budgeting purposes and projecting out at what point one of us is going to have to get more funding to support that, we probably should plan for that.
Well, I think you said it very softly, I'll put it that way. I guess to me, this is a school expense. It's like I'm all for having more officers and having more coverage. I'd like to have more officers just in general for the township. I've campaigned for that multiple times, and we have increased the number of officers probably by 25–30% since I've been on the board anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we've put a lot of time and effort into increasing our safety, security aspect for the township. Like I say, the school liaison was 100% paid for by the school system years ago. In the late 2000s, early, I guess I was elected in 2012. In 2012, the schools were not paying anything for the school resource officers. And they were going to drop that. And the township board felt strongly enough about having these officers in the schools that we paid 100% of that cost for a number of years. And it was only a few years ago that we finally got them to start paying money back to help cover some of the cost. So I find it, well, one, I find it very rude that the school liaison's not here to present this as part of the, wanting this. And to me, I guess I'm going to be a little harder and a little crabbier about the whole thing, that this is a total school expense, and they should be budgeting for this. Not only, like you said, he would like to have more than one more officer, if not 2 or 3 more, and for reasons, not only just for the Oxford incident, but for other reasons that are going on with our township and the people that are, that are here. So I guess I'm in favor of doing this, but I would like to, I guess what I'm afraid of is that we're going to say, okay, we're going to be part of this program, and then the school system next year decides, hey, we don't want to pay anymore, let the township pay. Because to me, this is an expense that should be coming out of the school budget. That's what the school, they have their budget, they have their millage. That's totally outside of the township's money. And then the township has to provide, health, safety, and welfare for the rest of the township outside the school system. That's why we have separate millages and we have separate issues that we're covering. So I guess I'm not campaigning that we should just quit paying 50%, but I think we should question adding more. And then what security does the township have if the school system decides not to pay any more like they did in the past? So.
Fine, and I think your comments are well taken, and we can pass those along to the school when we provide notice that we've passed this.
Mm-hmm.
Very well.
Oh, and I think, Carrie, it was a great idea about talking to the other communities to chip in, some like they do for the library, or no, the TV, like they do for the television, right?
Right. All right, anybody else on the board? Any member of the public wants to speak on this? Yes, sir.
Good evening again. Hi, I'm Mark Patterson. I think that the township millage for our police department has a better chance of passing than the school does. I know everybody wants their school stuff, but this has been a contentious situation, as Mr. Brown said, for a very long time, and it goes all the way back to 2008, where we paid for everything. And I understand, Carrie, you're absolutely correct. We would like to get these other communities to, fork up some money. But when it comes to the safety of our children and the safety of our schools, personally, as a resident, I don't care where the money comes from, as long as it's done. Thank you.
It's coming from the tax dollars.
Don't care.
It does. I'm just saying.
I know. I don't care where it comes from.
It's still all the taxpayer money. Right?
As long as our community's safe, I don't mind pulling out my wallet.
Very good.
I'll let the superintendent know that. Okay, is there a motion to approve or to not approve? I suppose I shouldn't prejudge this. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion if nobody else will. I'll move to approve one additional patrol investigator position to be assigned as the 3rd school resource officer at Clarkson Community Schools, and presented with costs to be split 50-50, with my harsh comments included, for the 9 months of school coverage. pending Clarkson Community Schools Board of Education approval, which that's part of what I'm worried about. And direct the supervisor and clerk to sign the 2022-2024 Law Enforcement Services Agreement, Amendment 1, effective August 13th, 2022, as the authorized representative of the township, and approve the 2022 budget amendment as presented, number 9 as presented.
Second. Did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
Jose, thank you. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just pass along my comments for him.
Will do. Next item on the agenda is money, and
Is
the
money?
money man is here.
Yeah, there you go.
Morning, man.
Good evening, everyone. We actually addressed this back in December. This has to do with the Thendara, the new pave area, we'll call it. And their, basically their snow removal and salting process and the contract that we have. This, call it the third contract, because there is an individual contract for Thendara 1 and 2, and this would be the third one. Was not made aware of this contract prior to budgets being put together, so it did not make the 21 budget or the 22 budget. So back in December, we actually amended the 21 budget for basically 2 of the 6 months that the contract is valid for. And now I'm back here again for the 22 budget to basically budget the balance of the contract, which is $10,000, or covering basically the first 4 months of the year. Right now, I mean, basically all the bills have been paid, because we do need to pay the contractors. So this is more of a budget thing. The money was there, we spent it, but now it just needs to be replenished because we have additional obligations later on in the year for the 22-23 year. So this will firm that up, but again, from what I hear, there's gonna be all new contracts coming. So again, we did bump it up a little bit for the next year, but we may be back again, depending on how those contracts actually come in. So basically, all I'm asking for tonight is an amendment for $10,000 to basically cover the last 4 months of this contract for the Thendara new pave area.
This is budget amendment number 6.
Budget amendment number 6.
Any discussion?
I
I may
think-
need to recuse myself. I live in Thendara. I don't know, I mean, my road got repaved. So this is the private section. So I would ask the board to accept my recusal.
You have snow removal there under this contract?
Yep.
Okay.
You may, yeah, I don't know where you're living there, so.
Pretty sure. I live in the part you're talking
I'll open the floor to a motion to recuse, to allow recusal.
I'll move that allow Paul Brown to recuse himself from this vote.
Second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You are recused.
Thank you, sir.
Just one comment.
Yes.
Again, this is money that's collected from the Thendara people, so we're not
Right.
technically using taxpayer money for this.
Great point.
Basically, we're the money handlers for this project, where we log it and we, collect the money based on the expenses, and I guess it's levied on their taxes, right?
Correct.
Pass through.
Right. So I mean, it's, I guess, just clarifying for the public that we're not paying to salt a certain subdivision's roads.
Right.
So.
Valid point.
I think he always does it so he has budget amendments so he can come visit us, that's all.
All right. Any member of the public want to speak on this? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the 2022 budget amendment number 6 is presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Next is request to approve 2022 budget amendment number 8 for janitorial services contract. And we're going to award a bid as well? Yes. Okay.
Forget those.
No. Mr. McKee?
Good evening, everyone.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Okay, so janitorial services, if the board recalls, just a little quick background, back in 2018, we had to make a quick move and sign on with a company to do our janitorial services. It was no bid at that time, but it was the right move to make, because the situation we were in with a vendor then. As the years have gone by, our needs have changed quite a bit. Plus, we wanted to get everything contract-wise in line and back on policy, the way we're doing things with all our long-term contracts to be competitively bid. So what we did with the janitorial services is that I got with all the department heads in charge of the buildings that were in this RFP, and it was the Public Works building, my building that I'm in charge of, this building here at Town Hall, and the sheriff's substation. So we had input from all three of us, put our input on what our cleaning needs were for at this time. They have changed quite a bit, and quite frankly, what we have been getting, there was a consensus it was substandard, and it was not what we weren't very happy with it, to be absolutely honest with you. So we went out for bid for this. So in the RFP that was out, we had all our cleaning requirements, so we wanted their frequencies and locations and what we wanted. So it was a good RFP. So when the bids came back, there was 7 bids that came back. We got a really big turnout on there. We had a mandatory walkthrough. I took everybody through this building, Public Works building, and the sheriff's substation, so everybody that bid knew exactly what they were looking at, what they wanted. Sheriff's substations, hours, things of that nature, what they needed to do. So everybody who was, on the same page. You could not bid unless you attended that mandatory pre-bid meeting. So that was part of the method to our madness, I guess, if you want to put it that way. So as the bids came back, like I said, we had 7 that came back. We reevaluated or evaluated all the bids that came back in, and we kind of narrowed it down to one company that we thought would be that would provide us with the best fit. It is not the low bid. I'll be straight up and tell everybody that right now. It was not the low bid. Reading the proposal, doing some background checks with that company that I did, I am very comfortable with going with them. It does cost more. We're getting what we're going to be paid for. It looks like that's what we're going to get. I'm very comfortable with the recommendation. All the other people that were involved with this are also good with this recommendation. So at this time, we were looking for the board for approval to award our 3-year cleaning contract for Town Hall, Public Works Building, and Sheriff's Substation to A&C Cleaning Services Incorporated. I think that was their name. Sorry. It's a new company, so yeah.
Property Services, Inc.
Property Services, there you go. I had it on the up there. Yep, A&C Property Services.
You said
If there's any questions.
They're a new company?
What's that? This new one. This is a different vendor. This is not the one that we currently have.
But is it experienced?
Very experienced.
Oh, we said new, I thought they just said the company.
New to us.
Yeah, new to us.
Gotcha.
Yeah, new to us. It's a change of gears that we're going to do in our cleaning, but I think it's the right move. And we have a nice contract, and we have contract was prepared. Actually, the contract documents were prepared by Dan's office, so our interests are protected on this. Where maybe not so much on the last one.
You kind of skipped over, but you did check the A&C's references.
Yes, I did.
So I mean,
yeah, I call it. One was just about naming company names. One was a Montessori school. Highly recommended. The other was a private insurance company, a large insurance company. One of the references was the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department. We'll have to talk to the lieutenant there because they didn't answer. They didn't call me back, so. But that's them. Oakland County always answers. But the references were good, and the ones that had different responses on, they were off the charts. They could not recommend them enough, and they were very, very happy, very responsive, very what they use. Highly recommended to super responsive. They were very, very happy with them. So.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with them. So.
Carrie, did you?
Just wanted to thank Dave and Leanna. I kind of put them through the ringer on this. Been dissatisfied for quite some time. I have heard a lot of complaints from other departments. Unfortunately, we're looking forward to a change, positive change. It is quite a big increase going forward, but I think the fees we were under before were set over the last 3 years, so I think we have to also take that into account. But it's been quite laborious, so I'm looking forward to this coming to fruition and we moving forward. So thank you, Dave, and thank you to Leanna, Deputy Supervisor, for their hard work.
Sorry. When will they start?
May 2nd. Scheduled May 1st, May 2nd.
Okay. Quickly. Any other comments by the board? Questions? Anybody, members of the public? Anybody online? Hearing none, is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal received from ANC Property Services, Inc. of Plymouth, Michigan for professional services associated with janitorial services for the Independence Township Town Hall, Department of Public Works, and the Oakland County Sheriff's Substation, as outlined in the proposal commencing May 2nd, 2022, for a total amount not to exceed $188,856 for a period of 3 years, with an extension option for 2 additional 3-year terms by mutual written agreement of the parties. Authorize the supervisor to sign the contract as the authorized representative of the township and approve 2022 budget amendment number 8 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to go into the engineering business. Item 9, a request to accept a proposal for engineering on Brady Lodge HVAC study.
Hey, good evening. In over 5 years, I think this is the first time I've ever been at cleanup. So my luck's run out, right? But we do have 4 proposals tonight in front of you in order for our last 4 agenda items. I did invite Jeff Huda this evening from Nowak and Frowse to help answer any questions if you guys have anything that I can't relay for you. But the first one that we have is a capital improvement project for Brady Lodge. And a while ago, we had put in our CIP money or funding to include an HVAC system to control the temperature within that facility. Unfortunately, as I dug into the project and started asking people for quotes, it's going to be a very tricky job because A, the building was built in 1921, rebuilt in 26. There's no insulation in the walls, no insulation in the ceiling. So I do think that trying to regulate the temperature in that facility for 12 months out of the year is going to be challenging. Not only is it going to be challenging from a heating and cooling perspective, but also I invited Jeff to come out and walk the building with me. There's some mechanical things that we need to square away before we can get an efficient system in that complex. So with all of that in mind, I think the most important thing for me was the historical aesthetics of the building. For us to be able to retain its marketability to the public for weddings and meetings and kind of give that historical nostalgia of being inside a building from 1921. Did not want to put a heating and cooling system in that building with a ton of ductwork running all over the place and mess up that aesthetic appeal that everybody wants and the reason that they rent it for special occasions. So in order to do that, I wanted Jeff to be able to put together a proposal for us to do a study. Within the study, if you had a chance to look at it, there's a matrix of the the current mechanical systems in that building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical things that are all going to be needed to be able to supply an 8,000 square foot building with proper heating and cooling. So this is kind of the first step, is trying to get an understanding of what exactly we need to do to get this facility where we want it to be from a 12-month out of the year heating and cooling perspective. A couple of the price tags that were thrown at me were a little bit shocking when we had a professional out there with us, but they are prepared to give us kind of options A, B, and C that we can bring back to the board, make a financially sound decision along with something that we're comfortable with as far as the historical aesthetics and the mechanical output that building can afford. So this is kind of step one. We'll have Nowak and Frowse do their study. I'll bring it back to the board and then we can make a decision on how we want to move forward as far as going out to bid to actually install the system.
Okay. Any questions by board members?
I'm guessing it's not going to include using the fireplaces.
I would like to. I mean,
pretty neat.
I don't know if our fire marshal would be ecstatic about that, but having 2 working fireplaces, and as a matter of fact, the person that we had with us had asked that same very question. So we can include that in the study for sure. We can have a sweep company come out and give us some integrity tests on those chimneys, because I think it would be a super cool option to have. We still have the original metal grates that cover the entire, opening of those fireplaces.
Oh, great.
So it's a great question, because it did come up when they visited the facility.
I'm guessing I'm the only one here who saw a fire burning in that fireplace.
Well, I'm surprised by how shallow they are, to be honest. As big as they are width-wise, they're pretty shallow, but
Generates more heat out into the room sometimes.
that could be,
Yeah.
it's a big space.
Yeah.
So,
So it's possible this could be a multi-year project based on the cost?
well, that's to be determined
Yeah.
with our ARPA funding conversations that are coming up. I'm hoping that the money that I have in my CIP married to what we have in that ARPA funding allotment for this project, that we should be able to get it over the finish line.
Okay.
So, my whole thing is I just want it done right. I don't wanna just throw money in an HVAC system. It is gonna be very hard to regulate a comfortable temperature in that room.
Sure.
So I just want it, again, to the historical perspectives and the money that we've already spent on this building, I'd really like to see it done well.
Sure. Any other questions by board members?
And just one comment for me, what you just said, Derek, about, to me, if you're going there for the historic value, the perfect heating and cooling atmosphere can't be top on your list. I think if that's your top priority, that venue might not be the right venue for you, for your event, but I think we can get something that's very comfortable or very workable and still maintain, I guess I'm key that we maintain the look of the building as well, so.
I have the feeling we're gonna have to make some compromises at some point over visual, over comfort.
It may not be 12
And
months.
price.
May not be a 12-month building.
And it may not be, we'll have to make a decision at that time.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd love to see the revenue for my department on a 12-month facility, but I think it might pay for itself over the course of time, but we can have that conversation
Yeah.
when we see the prices
Well,
come
like I said,
in.
there might be different events that fit the building, like especially in off winter months, better than maybe weddings or reception type things, is what I'm getting at. So I guess to me, if you get everybody there in like certain attire, that maybe isn't perfect for the amount of control we have over the heat or air, then that might not be the right venue for that event, or event for that venue, so.
It's surprising how that temperature of that room fluctuates with participation numbers. When we pack that building full of people, the temperature rises significantly in a short period of time. And in the wintertime, the doors opening and closing cools it off. In the summer, the sun beats through the windows on that west side and really heats up that room, so we've considered window shadings of some sort to try to regulate it naturally, but the heating and cooling system in a 12-month facility for a department that's already short on space would be preferable, so.
Any other comments by board members? Yes.
I have a question. I apologize. I stepped out for a second, so if you answered it, I'm sorry. But the company you're hiring, do they specialize in old buildings?
They have a consultant working with them that is.
Okay.
And
You could maybe
that
answer
consultant
that.
met with us the day that we did our walkthrough. So they will be working hand in hand with Norwalk and Frous to.
Because there's a lot of companies that I just know that restore the old churches in Detroit, and those
Sure.
kind of buildings fall along these kind of things that maybe when you're going out for bid, you look at those specific ones that deal with older buildings like this.
Well, not to get into too much of the logistics of the building, but the headmaster's quarters that's upstairs faces that main banquet room, and that may provide us with some alternatives. But again, because there isn't any insulation in that building, I really don't want to take away the ceiling, the roof, and insulate that, because I think that would be a shame. But hopefully, like I said, hopefully we get some good answers, or at least options. How about that? So.
Any members of the public? Anybody online on this issue? No? All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal received from Nowak and Frost of Pontiac, Michigan to undertake a study for a proposed capital improvement project, Brady Lodge HVAC, for an amount not to exceed $7,500, and authorize the township supervisor to sign the proposal on behalf of the township.
So a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, this is another engineering issue for the design of a maintenance garage
Yes.
at Brady Lodge.
Yep, well, as we stated in our CIP process, we currently are storing all of our park maintenance equipment within Brady Lodge in the Second Bay area, adjacent to the main banquet facility. Unfortunately, with maintenance equipment comes gasoline engines and grass clippings and all the fun things that come along with running a maintenance department. And the maintenance garage that we currently have at the site does not have a tall enough door or a deep enough footprint to be able to house our bigger equipment. Right now, we currently don't have a home for our truck, our tractor, lawnmowers, weed whips, those sorts of things. Gators can fit in the garage that we currently have, but we don't have enough space for some of our other assets to not be within the structure of Brady Lodge. So we set aside some of our CIP money to build a secondary maintenance garage or an addition onto the one that we have. A couple of options came up through the process. We do have directly kind of nestled in the corner between Brady Lodge and our new parking lot. There's an open grass area back there with a couple of trees. It's kind of surrounded by cedar. We had, at one time, we originally started with an addition onto the garage that we have. It proposed some drainage issues and kind of some things that we didn't like about being down next to the current facility. So then we started having discussions about what it would take to move it up next to Brady Lodge. Well, then our discussions turned to, we don't want our maintenance garage next to our historical building because then there, again, we still have too much maintenance traffic, and visually, aesthetics and all this sort of thing kind of came back into play. So now we're leaning more heavily towards either a secondary building down next to the building we already have, or back to the original idea. Easy. I know maintenance garages are exciting, but we're back to either an addition onto the building that we have or a secondary building down behind the lodge that's more closer to Andersonville Road. So this is going to kind of be a study of those three options, provide us with the blueprints and bidding documents that we need to get this project up and running and get it out on the street. Again, when we originally did the CIP, I think the market for materials, labor, and other sorts of fun things were probably in a better place than what they are now. So I'm fully expecting that, I think we have 140,000 set in our budget right now. I'm fully expecting this to come in above that number. But until we get it out on the street, we don't know. It's kind of a domino effect of issues though. Until we get our maintenance equipment out of the lodge, it doesn't make the building as attractive for renters. It kind of gives us a lot of issues with rental possibilities, so this is step one.
Okay, Carrie?
Quick question, going back to the HVAC, if you move that, because I think you and I had some discussions maybe a year or so ago, I know that Kubota or whatever it is that's in there, if that gets moved out, there was talk about maybe renovating that space to be more like a bridal prep area for weddings and things like that. Was that discussed with that thought in mind when he or they went through the building to look at the heat and the?
We've had those discussions about dividing that room in half and making it, because there's a door on both sides of that wall, the floating wall.
Yeah.
About making half of it a groom's area, half of it a bride's area, but honestly, I think that room, keeping it in an open space would probably provide more rental options as a secondary space than for just weddings. We might be able to provide some sort of accordion wall in there at some point.
But you are
or-
looking to do HVAC into that area as well?
Yes,
though? That's all I
that's
meant.
correct. Sorry if I
Okay.
misunderstood
No,
your
that's okay.
question, but yeah, we even talked about enclosing that wall at the ceiling to try to prevent noise from going from side to side and fumes and those sorts of things, if that was an option.
Okay.
But again, if we're doing that, we're going farther and farther away from the original structure of the building, so.
Any other board members? Paul?
Have you guys thought about creating that, that secondary garage as like a walkout that would go right into the hill there as you go from the existing garage and approach the back of the building? And then have a, you know, poured concrete roof on it, so I don't know what that does to the cost of building, and whether that would be cheaper, but you'd have something that would last a lot longer and not really need a lot of maintenance. I just don't know if it would fit, you know,
Right.
along that, but certainly the height's probably there to.
I would have to take a look at, we just had a grinder pump installed out there and sewer put in for the new bathrooms we installed a while back, so it may be in the location that you're speaking of. I think it's an interesting concept for sure. And some of the things that we did go over when we did our site visit was drainage is a big issue back there because of the slope running down to that drive and out to Andersonville Road. I thought it was gonna be a bigger deal than what Jeff thought it was. He didn't seem to think that the earth removal down there and kind of relocating some of that drive wasn't gonna be nearly as problematic as I thought. So, and that's, you know, an engineer speaking against the Parks and Rec director, so I'm gonna lean to his advice probably more than my expectations. But, yeah, honestly, I think for heating and for the water supply that we have there, I think our best option is gonna be just an addition onto the building that we have. But this is why we go through the process, so.
Any other board member questions, comments? Members of the public? Anybody online? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to accept the proposal received from Norwalk and Frous of Pontiac, Michigan for capital improvement project, Brady Lodge maintenance garage planning, for an amount not to exceed $16,522, and authorize the township supervisor to sign the proposal on behalf of the township.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, more engineering, is engineering services for a capital improvement project, namely Deer Lake Beach restoration.
Yeah, and this one kind of has a history to it too. We included this in our capital improvement a while back after the board had agreed to invest in this facility, so to speak. So we had a study done by HRC quite a few years ago in a permitting that we needed to be able to dredge the boat launch. And within that permit is also a restoration project or a restoration outline for what they had thought was pertinent at the time. In the meantime, I received a grant from SunCog to do rain gardens at Bay Court Park. The company that won that bid, Inland Lakes, their primary focus are seawalls, dredging, and shoreline restoration projects. So I was talking to the owner of Inland Lakes, and he had agreed to meet me at Deer Lake Beach to go over the permit to see if we were getting our money's worth for what HRC had engineered. He had come up with some ideas on ways. He's like, look, I've done these things. That's my business, and I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong, but I can tell you what I know. And he had gone into altering some parts of that permit to give us more of a bang for our buck, or at least more of a success story in the long term, for putting in more pilot groins and less of the coils on the beach, these sorts of things, dredging the inlet that goes under the road from lake to lake. He had some really neat concepts. One thing was in the original permit was to dig a 6-foot trench all along the fence, fill it with rock. That would provide water that runs off the road, a place to go instead of deteriorating the beach out into the lake. I think Jeff and I and Roger had all agreed that we could put more of a rain garden basin or swale in there along the fence that would move that water into the ravine, as opposed to going through the whole process of digging a 6-foot trench across there and filling it with rock. That could be a significant, cost savings, and probably a little bit, a little bit easier on the eyes to maybe have some plantings in there, or at least a basin to catch it. So that was just one idea. So what we're doing here is we need to rework the permit in order to have the new project bid with these ideas in mind. So I had asked Nowak and Fraus to get involved to re-engineer that permit with some of these ideas that we had before we go out to bid. So again, doing this, what I feel is the right way versus just paying somebody to get it done. I think we're interested in the longevity of this project, and frankly, our beach is deteriorated by the foot almost every year, so time is kind of the essence. I'd like to have this done by fall. And this is just part of the process, is we have to have that permit changed through the DNR before we can go out to bid and have it.
So don't dredge the boat launch area to allow 70-foot yachts.
Yeah, you know, I had a few comments, but
How do you know it can't
there was
take it
enough going
already?
around already. You know, and it's funny because we charge by the horsepower when people come in to register their boats at our office, and a few of them I've looked at and gone, what are you gonna do with that size of a boat on that lake? But we're not, you know, under our current ordinances, we charge by the horsepower, so I'm not there to regulate who can and who can't.
You don't put 200 horse on your fishing boat?
115. I haven't had it on Deer Lake.
Any questions, comments by members of the board?
Would any of the restoration run into the activities throughout, you know, the swimming lessons, things like that?
We're actually, because it's a fall project and the beach closes on Labor Day, I think we should be able to get this done after the season
I
is
thought you
closed,
said by
so.
fall, I didn't know you meant like during fall, so I was just,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, honestly, once school gets back in session, the beach numbers kind of dwindle, so even if we have to cut a few weeks out of the summer at the end of the year, maybe we'll get a cooler fall than we have, because I know we get a lot of people that, why is the beach closed after Labor Day? We don't have anybody to work because all of our kids went back to school, so.
Any members of the public? Anybody online?
I have one quick question.
Terry?
I know you lease it like from the village, it says, for like $1 a year to operate and maintain. Is there anything though when the maintenance part becomes a bigger issue, not just, you know, regular maintenance? I'm not talking an oil change, but you have to rehaul the whole transmission. Are they gonna pitch in anything more when it gets to a certain extent, I guess?
When we went through this original process to approve the CIP, I had reached out to the city of the village to let them know that the process was taking place. There were not any discussions of financial
That's a big no, Terry.
support.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion before, because when we renewed their contract this last time, if we wait till the end of the contract and we don't renew, then the city has to pay us back all the money that we've put into it. So Pat cringed when I said, well, maybe we should question whether we want to renew the lease or not. So, because he knows it's going to be a big arm wrestle if that ever comes to that.
That would be a fairly limited participation by city residents. There's only, what, 800 of them, 850 of them, against 30-some thousand.
Again,
so.
I think we weigh the value of having the beach and that high enough to, I guess, fork up that money, so.
Okay.
I can go down all the values of why we have it if you're interested, but I don't want to worry with a bunch of parks and recs.
That's in your master plan, right, that you're gonna talk about?
It will be.
There you go.
Oddly enough.
That's a good
I
segue.
would say a once in a while extenuating circumstance. That's why I said not just your regular oil change, but when you're gonna do a huge project, to just ask, I don't know. 800 people's a percentage of something.
All the sand went over to
2.5.
Jerry's Lake, so it's all theirs. So all the sand from the beach went over to Park Lake. So.
Middle Lake.
Middle Lake. so-
Yeah. All right. No further comments from the board or from the public or online. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the proposal received from Norwalk and Fraus of Pontiac, Michigan for a capital improvement project with Deer Lake Beach Engineering for an amount not to exceed $7,922, and authorize the township supervisor to sign the proposal on behalf of the township.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it's 4 for 4, right?
3 for 3 so far.
Right, okay. Let's get 4 for 4.
All right. Well, every 5 years, the Parks and Recreation Department has to renew its master plan per the state of Michigan if we are to be eligible for any grants through the DNR, which include land, water conservation, Michigan National Trust Fund, any of their grant programs. It is stated that we have to have a master plan in place, not only for grant purposes, but for inventory and for kind of a directional or a strategic idea of where our department would like to be in 5 years. I think that this sort of document is necessary. This year, we're kind of taking a different approach. We will be working with LAP, Landscape Architect Planners. They are also the engineers or architect firm for our new playground going in at Baycourt Park. I've had extensive conversations with Bob Ford regarding our master plan this year. The different approach that I would like to take with this master plan process is we want to establish a group of stakeholders community-wide and have an in-depth conversation about the lack of recreation facilities that we have in this community and how we go about trying to not only A, fund them, but find out B, what the necessities are. I've been here for 5 years. We've talked about the need of a soccer complex, which we're still in desperate need of. We've talked about indoor training facilities that our community does not have, and all of our community members have to travel outside of this community to participate in baseball, soccer, lacrosse from a year-round perspective. We do not have a recreation center here for the rest of our community, a 0 through 99 building for educational space, classroom space, dance studios, and the like. We don't have a health and fitness center or any sort of indoor exercise or athletic track. These are just things that a community approaching the population size that we have with the per capita household income that we have and education level that we have, these are some of those amenities that communities of our stature typically possess. So this process is going to be really kind of a process of figuring out, A, do we need these things? And B, if we do need these things, how do we go about attaining them? So I know I've had this conversation with quite a few people in this room, and I guess we just need to know how we're going to get there if these things are to come to fruition. We have those conversations throughout our master plan process in the past, and we've only dabbled in the acquisition side. I would like to ramp that up a little bit with other community stakeholders to discuss what their needs are, what our needs are, and how they could possibly be funded and how we move that into the future. So it's an exciting process. I've actually written a few of these plans before for a much smaller community, but it is a process. There is a lot of data, but I think that by moving this more into a strategic master plan, we can start moving some of those conversations into actual functional pieces of our department.
How do you determine the stakeholders?
Well, and I think those are discussions that we need to have. Is it chamber? Is it schools? Is it major donors? Is it user groups and partners? We have a large travel soccer group that we partner with. We have a large travel baseball group that we partner with. Is it our local football program that has a large number of kids in it? These are just things that, for myself, having 2 kids in travel sports, I'm surprised, I would say, that this community and the lack of amenities that we have. All of our hockey players here locally have to go to Lakeland or other surrounding communities in order to play hockey. Our senior center was too small the days we opened the door. So we need more space for our seniors. We're an aging in place community. Our senior population grows every time the census comes out. We have 1,400 members in a facility that's maybe 3,000 square foot at best. So we're kind of bursting at the seams from a recreational standpoint as far as athletic facilities, as far as indoor space. This is our opportunity to kind of figure out exactly what it is this community needs and then try to come to decisions on how bad we want it. So I'm excited to go through the process. I might be crazy, but I think that by altering the way that we do our master plan and answering some of these questions, we may be able to elevate those conversations to, okay, we know we need these things, how do we fund it? Is it a millage? Is it bonds? Sterling Heights just passed huge bonds in their area and added a ton of amenities. Is that a road that we could possibly go down? I don't know. But we can't answer those questions if we don't put the data together first. And this document is an opportunity to collect that data and present it to you so we can make healthy, conscious decisions on how we want to move forward in this community from a recreational perspective.
Carrie?
Not going through this process before, just wondering, in the big scope, outside of the stakeholders, you've got the public engagement and analysis. To what extent are you reaching, or will you reach, and how do you intend to reach out to the public for their input?
Well, the public input process is a big part of the master plan. We come before this board, we have a public hearing that announces dates of our public input sessions. Last time we did it, we had an input session at Brady Lodge. I think we had probably 30 or 40 people show up. But public engagement is a huge part of this process and a requirement from the DNR to be able to have this document be certified by the state. So
that's more like people coming on site and telling you their thoughts, or do you ever reach out? Other communities I've worked before, they've reached out with surveys.
Same thing.
And, okay. So
Yep,
that
and
would-
because
okay.
we're fortunate right now too, because the township is going through a master plan process as well as our safety path. I think this might, and I don't know how long it's been since our community's done this, might be an opportunity to maybe pay a company to do a community survey that answers a lot of these questions. Not just from a Parks and Rec perspective, but from a township perspective. There's a lot of money in data. It's expensive to get community input surveys. I mean, last time we did our master plan was what, the first year I was here, we redid it. We did a lot of Survey Monkey results. I mean, we have the whole, there's probably 50, 60 pages in the back of our master plan that is just all survey results. We analyze that data, bring it all together, and and we also take into consideration that data can be skewed. I wrote a master plan one year where I had 40 people from an equestrian club show up and skewed all the data from everything I collected that night because they thought everything should be a horse trail and barns. And that's not the case, right? So, but those are, the public input portion of this process is very important. And again, because matter of fact, Brian and I and Dave have already had conversations about how we can merge some of our collective data together to get us through this process, through all three plans.
Any other comments or questions by members of the board? Members of the public? Online, we only have one left.
No, one left online.
Online, yeah.
I bored them, sorry.
All right.
I would move to accept the
Thank you.
proposal received from Nowak and Frost, Landscape Architect Professionals Incorporated, Pontiac, Michigan, for Parks and Recreation Master Plan Update for an amount not to exceed $25,000, and authorize the Township Supervisor to sign the proposal on behalf of the Township.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve this proposal. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that concludes the regular agenda, regular business. We move to item N, communications, future agenda items and reports. We have 5 items here. Building Department monthly report, March 2022, and these are all on in the agenda packet online if anybody wants to look at them. Oakland County Sheriff's Department monthly report, March 2022. Fiscal 2021 actual budget comments for period ending December 31, 2021. Pre-audit results. Election Commission final, March 21, 22. And Information Tech Oversight Committee, ITAC, final minutes, March 15, 2022. Any board member comments?
I have one comment. I got a call over the weekend that the township was advertising for help on banners that were tied to the Lakeview Cemetery fencing. And they were expressing their distaste for that we would be advertising on the cemetery gates. So I did call Mr. McKee, and he did have those removed. But I just think in the future we should watch, if we're gonna advertise or do things on the cemetery fence, to at least keep in mind that the families in the township that are driving by might take offense to some of the things that we're doing. So.
Excellent.
But Mr. McKee informed me that they've been up there for like a year. I just noticed them, so it's like, and that was the first call I've ever gotten. But I just think for the future, if we're gonna tie something to the fence, it should be either something that's going on with the cemetery or something that's tastefully done to not offend our residents.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Any other board member comments? You're not gonna make a comment?
That's not nice. Yeah, I'd like to go home. How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, or the meeting is adjourned.